Are we living at the tail end of the age of progress? Well, if one listens to the optimism coming out of Silicon Valley, you'd think the progress made over the last 200 years is pittance in compared to what could await us over the next 200 years. But not everyone shares in the hope for a world in which the boundary between humans and machines is going to become more and more attenuated. What is the price that we pay for dreaming about fantastic futures rather than living in the now? Let us ask. The author of a book which has raised this question, here's Hal Niedzviecki, author of Trees on Mars, Our Obsession with the Future. And it's great to have you back here at TVO.
Thank you, Steve.
I always love it when you come visit because it gives me a chance to say Niedzviecki.
And it gets better every time.
Well, you know, in my regular daily parlance, I don't get these opportunities, so it's great when you're here. Hal, the title, Trees on Mars. How do trees on Mars figure into the story you're trying to tell?
Well, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, how many billionaires are there trying to colonize Mars, put a nice forest in, maybe a hot tub? There's at least two that I know of, and I took the title Trees on Mars from the famous pronouncements by Elon Musk, who runs the SpaceX private space agency, who has described Mars as a fixer-up planet and has said, you know what, we're going to get up there, we're going to put forests on Mars, we're going to have trees on Mars. So for me, it's a great title because it's a metaphor for a bunch of things that we want to do with technology that make no sense and in many ways are extremely anti-human.
Who's Branson, the other guy?
The other guy is this crazy Dutch dude, Bas Landorp, I think his name is. And he's running this thing called Mars One, in which he put out a huge call for people who wanted to go to Mars. And I don't know, thousands applied from around the world. And in fact, in the book, I interview one woman from Calgary who gets accepted into this. And
is this Christy Foley?
That's right, Christy Foley. And she gets accepted and she's going to go to Mars. And I said, you know, you're married, you have a lovely life, you have a full-time job. Why do you want to go to Mars? And by the way, this is a one-way trip. There's no way back from Mars. I mean, there's not even necessarily a way there, but there's definitely no way back. And the answers are very telling. They're very revealing of how the ideology of future at first has seeped into our minds. Because Christy Foley says to me, you know, going to Mars will really help the human race. And if I have to make that sacrifice, I will.
That sounds noble. Why do you not think that's noble?
Well, it's certainly noble, and I'm not faulting her particularly. I'm faulting a narrative in which we have a kind of ascendant technological progress where, you know, we have to make all these present-day sacrifices. We have to disrupt everything, and then we can get to the future, this technological utopia or this other planet where we get to start again and not make all the same mistakes. And so, you know, that itself is delusionary, although many people within that delusion are quite noble.
Well, one of the ways you describe it is this desire of wanting to travel to Mars is part and parcel of, quote, a vast systemic shift in our collective consciousness. So I guess I want to know a shift from what to what?
Okay, so for most of the 4 billion or so years that 4 million or so years that humanoids wandered around the planet, we thought of life primarily as a circle. When we contemplated sort of past, present, future, we really only had a now, an eternal now. And what we enjoyed in that time, we didn't enjoy luxury SUVs, we didn't enjoy refrigeration, but we did enjoy social certainty, the cohesion of the tribe, the knowledge that what was going to happen today was pretty much the same thing that was going to happen in a week, a month, or as far as they could care to imagine this, a millennium. What's changed now is now we have an idea of progression, ascendancy. We are using our technology to ascend to new levels of human achievement, and eventually we will get somewhere. We will get to the end of future. We imagine now that our goal as human beings is to somehow own the future, be in some kind of race to the future. And that is a massive shift from how we lived for all the time that human beings were on the planet, right up to maybe, you know, the 1800s, the 1700s.
So let's acknowledge it's a massive shift, but to strive, to seek, to yield, To boldly go where no one has gone before? I mean, this is all part of our culture. This is who we are. This is what we do. So what's the problem?
Well, that's the story that we tell ourselves. In fact, the reality is as I was writing the book, I constantly had to confront that question. Well, isn't this just the normal thing that human beings do? But it's not. It's not at all. What human beings want is social certainty. What they want is the assurance of continuity, that things will go on as they have always been. What we have always striven for, Yeah,
We get you.
we can, yeah, is a desire for things to remain stable. And when we have changed over the course of our relatively short history, when we have changed in order to maintain what we have had. So an example are the Chumash people, and native peoples who lived for 13,000 years continuously on the Channel Islands in Southern California. And studies of these people, who are an amazing people to study because they have lived for so long in the same place, show that they didn't change. The only time that they introduced over those 13,000 years any profound sense of change was when they overfished and there was some climate change issues, and so they had to slightly redesign their economy to create more of a trading opportunity with tribes on the mainland so that they didn't have to go anywhere or change any further. So the idea that through all time people have always sought new ways to do things, have always wanted to explore and disrupt. It's a myth. It's not true historically. It's not true socially. We are crotchety, obstinate people who want to. If we could watch the same baseball game over and over again, we probably would.
Well, you and I would, but I'm not sure about anybody else. In my enthusiasm to quote from my grade 10 English class, Ulysses there, I think I botched the quote. I think the quote's supposed to be to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And I think I got it wrong earlier. Anyway, wanted to correct the record so my grade 10 English teacher doesn't call in and say, you're an idiot, I taught you better than that. Another person who's contributed a great deal to this shift of our collective consciousness is a guy who I think his name is pronounced Ray Kurzweil. Who's Ray Kurzweil?
Ray Kurzweil actually works for Google, which, as we know, is the biggest technology company in the world. He also is an advocate of something called the singularity, this idea that we will eventually merge with our computers and in some way live forever, whether it's sort of in a robot mind fuse or a virtual reality kind of scenario. It's not
a digital kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not completely clear how this is going to happen, but he believes it's going to happen. He's given numbers to this. Maybe 2045 is one number that circulates quite widely. And he has a lot of people convinced about this. He is a very popular, very mainstream person. So when we talk about an obsession with the future, you can see that someone like this, who maybe 100 years ago would have thought, people would have said, this guy is nuts. Now they really say, wow, how are we going to get there, Ray? What steps do we have to take? I talk about Ray Kurzweil in the course of this narrative because he has so many followers, and many of the big players in Silicon Valley are investing in different aspects of this idea of forestall aging long enough for us to get to the future. And the future is really the end. It's the end of humanity as we know it, because we embark on this new chapter where nobody dies, everybody lives forever, and we don't have any problems. We live in this sort of perfect digital utopia.
Humor me on this supplementary, though. This guy's talking about putting whatever the essence is of our minds, of our personage, into some kind of digital form or I don't know, mind melded with machines or whatever. How different is that really from people of faith saying, my soul goes to heaven when we're dead, and something of us lives on forever?
It's very different. So we get back to this question of social certainty and how we used to live, and life is a circle, and the evolving notion of the afterlife was sort of another comforting aspect of the circular life. So you would die, and that's okay, because your tribe, your culture would go on, and life would go on as before. and you would even get to hang around a bit and also go on as before. And so it was okay to die. It was okay to move on. Now we have, I'm not moving on. I am never leaving this planet. Technology will, in my lifetime, Ray Kurzweil believes, and many others do, we will reach that level of technology where nobody has to die. And to me, this is a very profound split with any kind of relationship to the cycles of the planet, the things that we have once taken for granted, life and death, the changing of the seasons. To say, now we're going to do something else, it's a huge disruption, and it's also an anti-human, behind it is this kind of, I think, a really dark anti-human ideology.
If that's so, apparently a lot of people have it. Because last year, the Pew Research Center and the Smithsonian Magazine surveyed Americans, not Canadians, admittedly, Americans on their perspectives of the future. And here's what they found. 81% of people surveyed expect that within the next 50 years, people needing new organs will have them custom grown in a lab. Half those polled expect that computers will be able to create art that is indistinguishable from that produced by humans. Almost 4 in 10 expect that scientists will have developed the technology to teleport objects 50 years from now. Beam me up, Hal. 26%, just over a quarter, would get a brain implant to improve their memory or mental capacity if it were possible to do so. And all in all, nearly 6 in 10 feel that technological advancements will lead to a future in which people's lives are mostly better. What do you find problematic here?
Oh, just everything, really. I mean, it's all just, it shows how advanced the story of the future is in our culture, in the sense that people really want to believe this. They want to believe that we are on this track. And okay, you turn the news on and it's starvation and civil wars and terrorism. And if you're lucky, they might mention the real thing that is threatening us, which is, of course, climate change. But that's okay, because you can turn the TV off and go on the internet and find the solution for each one of these things. Was there a mass shooting? Okay, there's a guy in Silicon Valley who has raised money and is now developing a smart tech weapon which will prevent this somehow. He'll be able to, turn it off, or I don't know. There's a solution for everything technologically. So when I hear those numbers, I think, you know what? In America today, the fastest growing category of car, the fastest selling category of car, is the luxury SUV. Now, Elon Musk, who we talked about earlier,
Mr. Tesla,
he has just released the ultimate luxury SUV. I forget what it's called. It costs 132,000 American dollars. It comes with DeLorean-like, floaty doors. And when he released it, he said, "This is the car of the future. This car is so amazing." Actually, I believe his exact quote was, "This car, it's like it's from the future." So what does this tell us? This tells us climate change, don't worry about it. We've got you covered on that side. You can just keep driving your SUVs, keep doing exactly what you have always done. You will not have to change. The technology will advance to solve these problems. And when we look at these stats of 3 out of 5 people believe that we're just going to grow organs, it's the same kind of thing. We can just keep consuming and keep doing whatever we want. We don't have to change. If we've blown out our liver, we'll drop a seed in the liver bank.
Well, if this car that he's got with gull wings is not a battery-powered car?
It is a battery-powered car.
So then maybe it will save us from climate change.
Well, if you look at the issue deeply, if everyone in the world suddenly was driving an electric vehicle, we would not achieve a whole lot in terms of slowing down climate change. That's just the reality of it. Electricity still has to be generated. How is electricity being generated in the world? It's being generated by burning fossil fuels for the most part. So, what would save us is if we made profound reductions in the number of vehicles we put on the road in general. And that, of course, isn't where we're going, because we have this narrative of, don't worry, technology will take care of it.
Well, okay, what is the principle that you are standing behind which says people ought to forego the possibility of getting some kind of organ transplant to extend their lives?
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that people shouldn't get organ transplants. I think that we're moving far beyond that. We're moving into attempts to, generate entire new human bodies that we can sort of hop from one from the other and maybe live 2, 3, 4, 500 years in the hopes that we can reach that moment where there's just no chance we can die. And again, it's, you're sort of like, well, what's wrong with that?
You might get to see the Leafs win a Stanley Cup if you did that.
Really? That would be, they would be playing on sand, but, to me, it's tremendously sad. It's tremendously anti-human in the sense that what is so bad about dying? What is so bad about acknowledging that our time on Earth is finite? Then we move on and we make space for the next human beings, and the technological hubris that we have adopted to kind of say, no, humans should never die. Cows can die, in by the billions, but not humans. We'll empty the entire ocean of fish before we give up on any human comfort, including whatever we have to do to prolong our lives. And I think we need to, there are things that we shouldn't do. There are technologies that we don't need to adopt and that are anti-human. And while we're doing our thing, we're actually creating a worse situation for those next generations should they ever happen to arrive.
I'm trying to think if it was Annie Hall, the Woody Allen movie, where somebody says to Woody, write the great book and you'll be immortal. And he said, I want immortality, but I don't want it by writing, I want it by not dying. I mean, this is a thing. We don't want to die. We want to be around forever. We want to find out if the Leafs are ever going to win the Stanley Cup. We want to see what happens to this world years and years and years from now. Well, let me put it this way. All the guys that are sort of interested and involved around this, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Sergey Brin, Larry Page, Elon Musk you mentioned, let's go on Peter Thiel, all these Silicon Valley guys. Is there a thread that connects them all?
Oh, yeah. Well, every single one of those people you just mentioned has major investments in forestalling death in some way or another. Some of them are involved in DNA, some of them in mind meld technologies, biotechnologies. The other thread is that they all believe that the future is something that must be owned, that has to be pursued as if we were hunting an animal, and we can get to the future, we can sort of kill the future, and then we can eat the spoils. And they are our heroes. They are the heroes of the 21st century, and the narrative that they are producing, the only thing that matters is getting to that future, is the most powerful narrative in our times, and that's where we are. That's why I wrote this book, because it's such a bizarre thing to order an entire society around getting to the future first.
Although I think the guy, I'm not sure if I mentioned Steve Jobs in that list, and of course Jobs is the one guy who made a really bad decision and therefore didn't get to live longer than he otherwise might have. That's pretty ironic, isn't it?
I mean, maybe they'll bring him back.
Maybe they'll bring him back. Well, in some respects, he is immortal, because look at what he left us. You quote approvingly the writer and concentration camp survivor Viktor Frankl, who said, what a man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather a striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal. A worthwhile goal. I mean, isn't being able to do more tomorrow than what you were able to do today a worthwhile goal?
Well, if it's, I'm going to be able to watch more TV, I'm going to be able to consume more faster, I'm going to be able to have drones drop my latest flat screen device directly through the chimney into my living room.
Spend more time researching the cure to cancer. I'll have more time to write the great novel. I'll have more time to see my children raise their children. I mean,
their children raise their children, and I mean, in a way, I think we're getting hung up on something that is kind of a smaller issue of, isn't it good to live, aren't there advantages to living forever? Sure, on the personal, on the individual side, that's appealing. If you look at it from the bigger perspective, no, there are no advantages to extending the lives of people, and we have no idea how that's going to pan out. But that quote from Viktor Frankl is really about that there was this time when we strived, and mostly what we strived for was to maintain the continuity of our cultures and our society, and to understand things, but in a completely different way, not as an ascendant understanding. And once you start to imagine this world where we'll all be floating in virtual reality bubbles of endless comfort, which is sort of like what we have now, only more, I think we've moved out of any semblance of humanity and into a world that is really completely driven by a techno-consumerist fantasy that is kind of sick. Like, it's kind of like the ultimate 3D pornography with, touching nodules. It's that.
Ever done that?
I can't talk about that, but,
I was going to say, don't knock until you've tried it. No. Let's switch gears here. Tom Martin. I want to talk about Tom Martin, long-distance trucker, vice president of the American Preppers Network. What is that?
The preppers.
Yeah.
The preppers are people who believe that the world is on the brink of conclusion, and so they're getting ready. They're
many
preparing.
are there?
Oh, there's probably like 1 million in North America who are, identifying as preppers. I may be exaggerating that, or I may be underplaying it. It's hard to tell because there's so many different groups and societies.
And preppers refers to they're preparing for the end of days?
Exactly. And some of them actually are religious in the sense that they do believe that sort of, the biblical end of days is coming. But most of them are embittered, lower wage, lower opportunity. They come from those segments of society where they feel that they've been left behind by something very important. And they have managed to harness their bitterness and disappointment into this movement that says, you know what, we're not the ones who are going to be left behind in the end. It's going to be you people with your smartphones and your Silicon Valley ideas, because you're going to destroy the planet, and we're going to be at home with our stockpiles of corn and, all kinds of instant, gear and everything they need to survive.
Because they've prepped. Here's you from Trees on Mars. Vast swaths of America, shut out of the promise of future, both materially and spiritually, are very open to envisioning a different future in which those consolidating power in the information age lead us to collapse, while those who seem powerless and left behind now turn out to be all right all along. Is this the 2015 version of David and Goliath?
In a way. I mean, what it is it's another fantasy. So every prevailing narrative in society has a fringe narrative. The prevailing narrative is that we are on a endless course of technological upgrade that is going to just keep making our lives better. The fringe narrative is that we are on a course of technological upgrade that is dehumanizing and destructive and ultimately is going to destroy the planet. And that may very well be true, but that there are heroes and people who see this now and they will survive, and that this might actually be a good thing. There are preppers who actually want to sort of speed up this process, and some of them get labeled terrorists by the various government agencies because they do want to sort of actively bring about the end rather than just waiting for it.
This is absolutely not a facetious question. I sort of preface it that way because I don't want you to think that I'm being a smartass here. How much time do you think we have left?
I don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, it's the environmental news is catastrophically bad and vastly underplayed. But there are moves to ameliorate some of that. They aren't the moves that are going to make much of a difference.
So how do you see it unfolding?
Well, at the end of the book, you're supposed to do it when you write a book about a social problem. You're supposed to say at the end, here are my solutions to this problem. We're overfishing the tuna. We got to just pick a different kind of tuna and put these laws in place, and everyone can go and enjoy their tuna sandwiches forever. I wasn't able to do that last chapter. You know, the last chapter of the book was the hardest one to write because there isn't a solution. You know, we are us. We are, we are an animal that consumes above and beyond what we need to consume and moves on to something else, a new territory, or more aptly, a new kind of technology that will allow us to keep consuming. So to ask us to change our nature after 4 million years, I think it's a tall order for me to be able to, say that now I've got it, now I know how we're going to change our nature. I think that there is a profound sadness in the loss of the environment, in the degradation that we're experiencing. And I explore that toward the end of the book, and I talk to people who are trying to come up with ways to not be preppers, but to acknowledge that we are on a downward slope. It might not be precipitous, and we might not, reach 2045 and fall off a cliff. Maybe we have 1,000 years, maybe we have 200 before we change completely, and this unsustainable path we're on forces change.
Naomi Klein, I think, would be a person who would agree with you that we're on an unsustainable path and that we've got to make significant changes. She likes you. She blurbed about you. She said you're one of the wisest, funniest, most acute cultural critics writing today. She is, of course, quite famously a co-signatory of that LEAP manifesto that came out during the last election campaign. Here's a little blurb from that. She writes, "We could live in a country powered entirely by renewable energy, woven together by accessible public transit, in which the jobs and opportunities of this transition are designed to systematically eliminate racial and gender inequality. Caring for one another and caring for the planet could be the economy's fastest growing sectors. Many more people could have higher wage jobs with fewer work hours, leaving us ample time to enjoy our loved ones and flourish in our communities. We know that the time for this great transition is short. Climate scientists have told us that this is the decade to take decisive action to prevent catastrophic global warming. That means small steps will no longer get us where we need to go." Did you sign on to this?
I did not.
Why not?
Well, I mean, nobody asked me to, but...
would you have?
Would I have? Probably not. I don't believe that. I mean, I love their vision. It's a beautiful vision. There's nothing in human nature that suggests that we could achieve what they're describing. There is a lot to suggest that we could never get to what they're describing. I think it's just such a tremendously complicated psychological process in the human mind of what is the future? What do I want? What is now? And to sort of say that we could tap into the right impulses to create this fabulous world that they're describing, I do think it's a fantasy. Ultimately, we have several psychological impulses. To stay the same is the strongest one. To appeal to the future to help us stay the same is an incredibly powerful psychological impulse. And those things kind of fight against each other. I know you're looking at your notes because now I'm getting all confusing here, but
no, you're not getting confusing. But I just quoted Naomi Klein, so I wanted to ask you now about Paul Kingnorth. Who's Paul Kingnorth?
Paul Kingnorth is a British writer. He wrote this novel called The Wake, and he is known as the founder of this this kind of society that gathers and kind of does almost funerals for the world. It's the Dark Mountain Group.
So you're more with him than her.
I am. I think what we need to do now is take a lot of stock in where we're going wrong, what kind of story we have told each other all these years to make it so that even we pass milestone after milestone of destruction of our environment and massive mental epidemics of mental illness in our society, and we don't change anything. We just intensify. So I think now we have to look at those stories and try to hope that the telling of that story, of where we went wrong, will benefit somewhere down the road when all of this finally turns into something else. I think that's the best we can do, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't be part of environmental movements and we shouldn't try to forestall things, and we shouldn't push for higher wages and all these things, because we have to live in the present, and we should do those things not for the future. We should do them for the now, because they will make our lives better.
In our last couple of minutes, I'm going to get personal with you here. You got a couple of kids, yes? How old are your kids?
They're 5 and 10. No, wait, they're 4 and 10.
Okay.
It's complicated.
It's actually not that complicated. You got kids, Hal. You can't be this down about the future and look at your babies every day and be this down about the future. You just can't.
Well,
how do you, like, what are you going to tell your kid? I mean, when you discuss this kind of stuff with your children, how do you portray the future that they will own in a couple of decades?
It's a hard question. This Steve, this was the hardest book that I've ever written. People say that, but in fact it was true. I really struggled with it. What can I say that will make this all right? What can I say? And I'd like to sort of dedicate this to my children. I didn't ultimately, because you just couldn't. We are in an incredibly difficult time, and my children come home from school and they're waving leaves around and they're talking about how they, learned about recycling and composting and stuff. And I encourage that, and I say that's great. And I think that they, in some way, will have to come to the realizations that many of us are coming to. And I won't have to tell them. They have to come around to seeing what things are for themselves, and I think more and more people are coming to realize that we are using the future and technology as a last gasp to maintain an unbelievably unsustainable lifestyle.
Okay, I'm going to get even more personal here. Why bother having the kids if this is what you see the future as being?
Because I don't have the answers. Nobody has the answers. I don't know how it's all going to turn out. I'm not saying, we may be able to have that horrible series of events that force us to change, and many people may be able to be along for that change and develop new and different kinds of societies that have some of these narratives within them and tell different stories, and so we make different changes. So, to say don't have children, I mean, what I'm trying to do is put out a story about the human race and where it is now and why it still matters and what things we can do that will still matter. And I think that's always worthy, and part of that is definitely having children and carrying on with your life. I don't end the book by saying let's all have a mass suicide party and drink the Kool-Aid. That's not how I feel, but I do feel that on the flip side, to go around saying it's fine. Either we're going to have this big turnaround of great hope and everyone's going to leap into a better world, or we're just going to develop all these new technologies and solve all of our problems with the snap of a couple of Elon Musk's rich fingers. Neither solution seems likely to me.
I can't recall having had a guest on this program who I hoped was wrong more than you just now. But you know what? Thought-provoking as hell. And I'm really glad you did the book and you came in and talked to us about it tonight. Trees on Mars, Our Obsession with the Future. Hal Niedzviecki. Thanks a lot for coming into TVO tonight.
Thanks, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.